Brat, the meme of summer 2024, is now confusing boomers thanks to Kamala Harris's social media team. So it's probably on its last legs, which means it's my time to shine with some unsolicited design analysis. Brat is a prime example of a trend called anti-design, which has come to prominence over the last 5 years or so. Anti-design, also previously known as digital brutalism, is characterized by minimalist layouts, a very raw aesthetic, and using traditionally ugly system default fonts like Times New Roman and Arial, which features on the cover of Brat. Arial has always been looked down on as an inferior knockoff of Helvetica by designers because it was commissioned by Microsoft because they literally did not want to pay the licensing fees for Helvetica, and it matches the metrics of Helvetica, at least the original version did, so that you could just swap one for the other. And there are some distinctive design changes that were made to keep it separate from Helvetica. You can see here in Brat, like the lowercase a does not have the spur that we have in Helvetica, and the lowercase t has an angled rather than a straight terminal. Another typical feature of anti-design is the text is distorted. This is a huge taboo amongst designers traditionally. It's kind of like snapping your pasta in front of an Italian or putting ketchup on a really nice steak. You just don't distort the type, like change the aspect ratio and make it taller or wider. The reason this was taboo is that it changes the stroke contrast of type, and that's something that a designer, when they create a typeface, that they're very deliberate about. Do they want it to be monolinear, meaning that the stroke is always one thickness all the way through, or do they want a very distinctive high contrast, like in a font like Bodoni, where you have extremely thin parts of the type and very thick parts as well. And when you change the aspect ratio of a text box, you mess up that contrast because suddenly, especially in a monolinear font like Arial, parts of it will be thicker and parts of it will be thinner because of that change. So in this example on Brat, the horizontal lines will be thicker than the vertical lines now because it's been made proportionally taller. And the reason why that's such a popular thing to do in anti-design is pretty self-explanatory. It's a big fuck you to the rules of good design. And that really works in this context of trying to portray that attitude of I don't care, much like punk's DIY aesthetic back in the 70s and 80s had this DIY collage aesthetic that was a big middle finger to the establishment. Lastly, I want to talk about the blurriness of the text, which is probably a little more detailed than you might think. There is an official Brat text generator, but it just applies a straight blur over the top, and that's not actually what we see on the album covers themselves. You can see that in this image where it's been blown up to an enormous size behind Charlie XCX as a background. What they've actually done, as opposed to traditionally when you want the crispest vector artwork or the highest resolution artwork you can get, they've rasterized it at quite a low resolution. They maybe had an on-screen preview that just taken a screenshot of, and then that's been compressed. You can see the artifacts of digital compression like JPEG here. Like think about deep fried memes as being on one end of that spectrum, and here it's just been done pretty subtly, but it's there. And then what they've done is stretched it out and resized it using probably Photoshop's basic image upscaling, no kind of fancy AI algorithm, just plain old bicubic resizing that gives a kind of blurry, soft edge to it. But for various complex math reasons I won't get into, it creates quite a jagged staircase effect on what used to be smooth curves. It's deliberately constructed to have the feeling of something done very quickly and shoddily. The reason they would want to create that effect is for the authenticity, that it feels like a human being has done this. Maybe not a trained human being, but a human. And I think that's really important at this moment in time when we are swamped by AI sludge. And this has kind of broken our metrics for what high effort artwork looks like, because a lot of stuff that used to take a lot of time to create before can now be generated in a couple of clicks. I think this has been a very deliberate move to kind of show the imperfections of the human process and to leave no doubt that there was no AI involved in the process. I think that makes it a really interesting artifact in our visual culture, and it's something that has become so mainstream where even one of the next US presidential candidates is playing off that meme. So I hope you enjoyed that very nerdy dissection.